classes I go to I don't know a lot about. So I'm going to ask you to think for a minute, what's the greatest thing about Decatur High School?
Miss Orvitas.
That's right.
Anything else that's just great about Decatur High School?
Band.
You what?
Band.
Band? Anything else? He acted like he was going to say something back there.
Oh, I have one.
Band?
I
Yes?
just love AP review sessions.
Especially on Saturdays.
Something's wrong then, because that's, the only good thing about AP review sessions is they still don't go to 2 o'clock, 2:30 like they used to. Because that's a long day, a very, very long day. I have asked that you put your names, because I will call on you to give me some input. So I've asked you to kind of put your name up where I can see it there. Well, it doesn't have to be your real name. Whatever you want me to call you today is what you should put on the card there. My name is Rhonda Miller. I've been teaching stats for about 8 years, APSTATS. I also teach AP Physics 1. And I'm about 5 miles down the road at Hartselle. And I know Hartselle's not probably one of y'all's favorite places, but we came here last night. My husband coaches basketball and coaches football there at Hartselle. Y'all have our guidance counselor here as your principal, Mr. Berry. I hope you like Mr. Berry. He's one of my dear friends. I get to school at 6:30 and he would too, and we would have great conversations. I taught both of his children. This is my 30th year to teach. I still like teaching. I teach dual enrollment with Calhoun stats along with AP stats as well. I have 3 children. I've got one son that plays football at UNA. Got a daughter that works at Crestline Elementary School as a special ed teacher. And then somehow we managed to, I've got a 10th grader too. He got his license last week. So it's always fun at our house. So I want you to feel free today to ask whatever you want to ask. I don't want this to be a stressful time. I know it's tough. Saturdays are tough. We got an Auburn game tonight. We got to get home and cheer for. But ask. We're going to do a couple of activities here because just sitting in this seat becomes very, very long. So I've given you a couple of activities. So just make sure you got everything right now. You should have this big, thick packet of questions. Now, this goes with you wherever you go because I think you guys will swap out. Yeah, I'll have you for 2 sessions. We'll do experimental design first, and then we'll do probability. And then you will go across the hall over there to do data analysis. So you need this packet for all sessions. It's got all your questions in it. We're going to do a little activity with ESP. So make sure you got this little ESP activity sheet. And then you should also have this little activity about a census. I hope y'all haven't done these 2 activities. Okay. So we'll do those to break our monotony. If you need lifesavers are up here, so feel free to get what you want. Those are for you guys to eat during the day. Just ask that you please make sure to put your paper in the garbage up here. We will do the M&Ms with a normal model after you come back from break. And yes, you can eat them once we get our data collected with those. So, all right, well, let's get started then. Do a little talking. So tell me about what's the difference between a population and a sample?
Population is like the whole sample, but you can.
Population's everybody, everything that's included, and then what's a sample? What you're examining. Now, we do need to remember terminology here. Parameters are the things that we know about the population. Again, on the AP test, they can't just ask us normal things. They want to make sure you know the AP terminology. So you need to know what the word parameter means, and you need to know what the word statistic means. So statistics are going to be about your samples, and parameters are going to be about your population. Now, this word census comes up quite a bit. It says the study of an entire population is called the census. Now, tell me what you know about a census. Okay, how effective do you think that census is? Do what?
Pretty effective, right?
You think it's effective? Why not? It can't account for everybody. Who can it not account for? The non-response people, which is generally me. You know, there's people that call me on the phone that I hang up on. I'm kind of a non-response person myself. But also homeless people, he's very right, and they're a big part of the population. But one thing we need to get out of the mindset of is that you can take a census for a small population. Like, what if I wanted to do something with all of the AP students at Decatur High School? So my population is all the students at Decatur High School. Could you effectively do a census with that?
Yes.
Yes, because your teacher over here can ensure that each one of those is taken care of. But when you go to something like the white-tailed deer count in Alabama, do you really think we are tagging every white-tailed deer in Alabama?
No.
What do you think we're doing?
Tagging those we find, dumb ones.
Right, we're doing samples. And from those samples, we are going to make predictions about the entire population. Now, it wouldn't be feasible to do a census for every white-tailed deer in Alabama, because we're not going to get to that point. We're not going to tag them all. Now, in your hands, you have a little activity there. How good is a census? So find your little frog activity there. Now, what you have in your hand is, you don't have a frog activity? Okay. Yes, just take them. Anybody that needs one, she's going to be our assistant here. All right, so look at the directions. It says, printed below is a story which can be used to demonstrate the effectiveness of a census. Assume that the letter G, or little g, is a defective product caused by the gremlin, and that you're the inspector. Allow yourself about 3 minutes, I'll give you a little longer, 3 minutes is tough, to count all the G's, or G's, place your total at the bottom of the story. Now again, we're thinking about a census here. Can you find everybody to ask them the question? So you're looking for every G. So give me a count. Little G's, big G's, see how many G's you can find.
worksheets, answers, like these frog things, activities, and they're all in files. I'd be happy to share that with you, because people shared that with me when I started too, so I would be happy to share that.
Take about a minute or two more and get them totaled up. Then I'm gonna go around this room and let you tell me how many G's you got. Now again, we're thinking about here how difficult it is with a big population to get everybody. But if you have a small population, a census is okay. They're generally going to ask you some question along that lines on the AP test just to make sure you understand about a census. All right, we're gonna start here with Lee, and we'll go down the road. All you're gonna do is give me a number, okay? And just zigzag around and tell me how many you got. So lead us off.
80.
83, 79, 81, 82, 86,
Go ahead.
83, 81, 83,
We got you.
82, 82, 80,
All right, come up this road.
82, 76,
81.
79, 82,
82.
81,
80.
80,
80.
80, 80,
Lucas.
86. I mean 76.
79,
79. 80.
All right, so we're all over the place here, around the 80s. So the exact number here is 83. Now, somebody had 83. Who had 83? 83. But again, it's to prove the point, the bigger the population is, the harder it's going to be to do a census. But if it is a manageable population, you will be able to do a census. All right, so are we kind of okay with that? Just thinking about that general idea. Don't just think a census is always a bad thing. Because if it's a small population, it can be a great thing because you talk to everybody in the group. It can be the best piece of information you'll ever get if the population is small enough. All right, just a couple other things. Again, when we were talking about our parameter and our statistics here, you need to make sure that you know the variables, and these are the general variables that you're going to see on the AP test. We'll talk in a little bit about the normal model and making sure when you're doing the normal model, when you're calculating z-scores, that you're putting in, if you're doing parameters, that you've got mu. If you're doing statistics, it's x bar. Now, some textbooks actually teach the statistic as Y bar. The Bach book does that, so it just kind of depends on what textbook you have, but on the AP test, it's gonna be X bar for the mean of a sample. And then in general, for the standard deviation, for the samples, and I assume y'all, that's what you've been doing right now, is samples. So you've probably seen S. Some textbooks use SD. So just know there are different forms other than the textbook that you use, okay? So just kind of be aware of that. And then for proportions, for the statistic, P hat, and for the parameter, P. Now, you'll use a lot of those P hat second semester when you do your inference for that. But just be aware that there are two different symbols for a lot of things. And on the AP test, if you're going to use a symbol, you need to use the correct symbol. Now, you're better off probably not even to write the symbol if you think you're going to do it wrong. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so we have two types of studies. We have observational studies and we have experiments. Now, I know you've done linear regression and you've probably heard your teacher say many, many times that causation, just because two things are linked to each other, correlation does not imply causation. That, I hope you've heard that. Correlation does not imply causation. And with that, you have to know that in order to prove that one thing causes another, the only way to do causation is to do a well-defined experiment. Set up an experiment and go through it. Now, again, there have been years that they've asked you to design the experiment in the free response section. So you do need to know how to set up an experiment with the variables and stuff in it. All right, bias. I think we all know what bias is when you get a favorable outcome and everything doesn't have the same particular outcome. So I'm not going to talk about that. Types of bias. Now, several of your questions today that AP has given us, A+ College Ready has given us, deal with being able to pick out the different kinds of bias. Now, these are the general types, voluntary. Now, remember, with voluntary, you're the person who chooses to send back the survey. You choose to send back. You're the volunteer, so make sure you know that. Undercoverage means there's a whole group of people that are being ignored by the way you're doing it. Non-response, when subject's chosen, do not answer. Again, that's generally me. I just don't respond. And then response bias is when you give an incorrect answer. That's like when a police officer is asking the questions, do you use drugs, you might not tell the truth. So your response might not be true. So again, response bias depends on the answers that you give. All right, types of samples, SRS, stratified, cluster, convenience, systematic. So those are the ones you generally need to be familiar with there. So if I say something y'all hadn't done, just say we hadn't covered that, okay? And I'll spend a little more time with it. So basic vocabulary, making sure that you know the X variable, the Y variable. For my students, they're still learning what needs to go on the X and what needs to go on the Y. I don't know why that's so difficult, but whatever you're manipulating, remember, needs to go on that X-axis. These are the things that if you are setting up an experiment that you would have to label. If you have a free response on the AP test, you're going to need to make sure that you point out what's the explanatory, what's the response, what are your experimental units you're dealing with, what are your factors, what are your levels, and what are your treatments. All those things have to be identified if you do a free response on an experiment. And then you have a completely randomized design. You take the list of experimental subjects, throw them in the hat, pull out the numbers. You know, that's one of the best ways to randomly assign treatments or subjects to treatments. You just throw them all in the hat and pull them out. And that is acceptable on the AP test, just as acceptable as using a random number generator on your calculator or using a random number table that you're given. So any of those are acceptable. We're going to generate some random numbers in a minute on your calculator. All right, so we've done that. Now, so what I would like for you to do is to read this. Now, this is not in your packet. This is just some of the stuff I use with my folks. Read this and see if you can pick out from, and again, the biases are in your packet, what kind of bias this is going to be. Now, I'll let you read it. So read it and see if you can decide what is my source of bias here. All right, so somebody tell me what you think. What type of bias are we introducing here, or do you see here?
Voluntary response.
Do you say it again?
Voluntary response.
So tell me why you think it's voluntary response.
Well, the survey came from magazine subscribers, so they would have to send it in. Car owners and telephone directories.
All right,
So you would have to be willing to actually do the survey, which is voluntary.
all right, somebody else got another thought? Yes?
Undercover.
So why do you think undercoverage?
It's not everyone subscribes to a magazine, has a car, or has a telephone.
And you know, back in this age, when this was done in 1936, that could have been a lot of people who did not do that. Now, here is the thing on the AP test. They do accept multiple answers on things like this, but you have, now if it's in multiple choice, obviously they're looking for one thing. But if it's free response, a lot of times it is, and you notice I tacked on here, other answers are possible. But if you're doing this in free response, remember they're not just looking for under coverage, they're looking for a little bit of explanation there along with that. So since the digest survey comes from car owners, the people selected are mostly from high income families, and that's mostly Republican at that point in time. Now, you do need to know that all, even surveys that are done today, you know, that you see on TV about President Trump's approval ratings. I mean, how do you really think they get that number? What do you think they do to get his approval ratings? Anybody know? What do you think they do?
Survey.
Who do they survey?
The strong supporters.
In general, because you know, you can look at Fox News and they'll say he's got a 60% approval rating. And then you flip over to one of the other channels and he's got a 30% approval rating. So again, one thing we learn in statistics is, hopefully when we come out of this, is that you can make the numbers say whatever you want them to say. Whatever, it just depends on who you are surveying. Now, you know, if you're just doing his supporters, we're entering bias there. So you really have to make sure that you have a group of a simple random sample, which doesn't happen very often with those kinds of numbers. All right, here's your second one. So read this one and see what you think about it. So what are you thinking when you read this? You want to estimate the total amount of money spent by students on textbooks. Each semester, UNA, you collect register receipts for students as they leave the bookstore during lunch one day. What do you think? Convenience. Obviously, that's very convenient to do. What other problems do you see there?
That's undercover shooting.
It's convenient, you're taking the sample very conveniently, but then it would be under coverage. Anything else there you see?
Only one day.
One day. So again, that would tend to lead to, what do you think, under coverage as well. You wouldn't get everybody. So convenient sampling, an easy way to collect data. Under coverage, students who buy books from online bookstores are not gonna be included. So a lot of different things here that could be issues with this. All right, last one. To find the average value of a home in Plano, one averages the price of homes that are listed for sale with a realtor. Under coverage, anything else?
Convenience again, they're just doing one.
One realtor, yes, all right, so undercovered, leaves out homes that are not for sale or homes that are listed with different realtors. Now, these three things that are up here, I have taken these from previous type AP questions in multiple choice sections or free response. So these are the kinds of things that they expect you to be able to do. And again, a lot of times you're just gonna pick these out of a multiple choice type thing, okay? So just make sure we know how to pick those. All right. So next in your packet there, I want to make sure that you know how to run a simulation. So we're going to do a little activity here to run an actual simulation. All right, so let's talk about what we've got here. It says your friend claims he has ESP. What are you going to say to him if he tells you he's got ESP? What's ESP? Well, you will get 10 volunteers to sign their names on identical cards, seal the cards in identical envelopes. You will then shuffle the pile of envelopes and hand them to your friend. So think about what you're doing there, because you have to be able to simulate this little experiment here. So using his alleged powers of extrasensory perception, he will distribute the envelopes back to the volunteers, trying to match each person with the one containing the proper signature. So you got an idea of what he's going to do here? So he's going to take the envelope, try to give it back to who it belongs to. Of course, it will be quite stunning if when the 10 volunteers open the envelopes, they all find their own signatures. If that happens, you will certainly believe he really does have ESP, if he could do that. All right, but that's unlikely, and we all know that. So, chances are he'll match some people with their signatures and miss others. You need to know how well an ordinary non-ESP empowered person might do it by chance. So we're going to see by chance how many could you get. All right, so then you will decide how many matches your friend needs to make to convince you that he does have some mystical insight here. So before actually conducting this test, then you need to simulate it. Now, do we know how to run a simulation?
We just did this last class.
This?
Well, not this.
Okay.
But simulation.
Okay, so we'll practice running simulation then. Okay, so you use either your calculator or random number table to determine how many matches you would consider to be statistically significant. All right, so what do you think? Let's get a number. What do you think he would have to get right out of 10 for you to think he really had ESP? How many? All right. Now, let's see by chance what we will actually get then. All right. Now, it tells us here to run 20 trials. So, what I'd like for you to do is to flip this over on the back. Now, have y'all been running them with the calculator yet?
We have not. We did
Okay.
the number table and playing cards and dice.
Okay, well, I'm going to run it in the calculator,
Okay.
if that's okay with you. All right, so at the top of your page, number straight across from 0 to 9. From 0, and kind of space them out just a little bit, to 9. Just because it's easier to set up a simulation from 0 to 9 than to do it to 10. Because we'd have all single digits. All right, so we need to generate, well, if you're doing this on a number table, you'd pick the first 10 numbers that you had there, 0 to 9, and see how many of them actually lined up there. So let's do it in our calculator. If you've got a graphing calculator, can't do it in a regular one, but let's get our graphing calculator out. All right, and if you will go to math, so select math, and go over to probability. You know, this is where your permutations, combinations, factorials, and all those things are. And go down to number 8. Well, for me it's 8. It says RANINT, no rep. So what I'm setting up here is a random number list with no repetition. Now, if you can have repetition, then you could use my number 5, which is random integer generate there. But I don't want any repetitions. All right, so I'm going to select that one. Now, what I want this calculator to do for me is give me 10 numbers back and see how many of them line up, because this is what's on your calculator represents him giving the envelope back. Okay? So let's set up to get 10 numbers. So I'm hoping yours probably says lower at the top. You see the word lower? Okay, so we're going to start at 0 and we're going to go to 9. And then it says, how many numbers do you want me to generate? Well, I want you to do 10 numbers for me because I want 10. All right, so put N for 10 and then hit paste.
How is it gonna not repeat if you have 9 numbers and you want to list it?
Now say that again, because if you don't do if you do repetition, it could all be ones,
Right.
or it could all be twos.
You're asking for 10 numbers, but you said 1 through 9.
0.
Zeros included.
Oh, you did 0 through 9? As your lower, what number did you put in?
0 to 9, because I just want to do single digits, okay?
Okay.
Because have y'all done double digit simulation yet?
I don't
Okay. Well,
know. I think.
if you can run a simulation with single digits, it's always easier. But if you've got something like 33%, you're probably going to have to run a double digit simulation for those kinds of problems. But if you can